to another video. Let's set up January. I know we're partway through it. There's not going to be tons, and I have already pre-sketched them out. So we have the front page here, which has just a generic January title page, and I'm going to do some sort of illustration or something around here, which you will see me do. Then I have a kind of health tracker, so we're going to be tracking a few things like mood, going to the gym, steps, water, sleep, period, calories, weight, whether I've eaten fruit, whether I've left the house, if I've spent any money, and whether I've cooked at home. And then I have a page for highlight of my day, which I will probably do every month, hopefully, if I keep up with it. And then after that, it will be my spreads with my actual calendar for January, so I can start writing in some things that I need to be mindful of during this month. So it'll be that kind of thing. I've shown you the sketches first because you will see more illustrations and things like this in this video compared to the 2023 setup I did. So let's get into it and see what we can create. So I'm not gonna say too much about these spreads because I do a little bit of an overview at the end. So if you do want to hear my thoughts behind the spreads a little bit more in depth, then please stick till the end so you can hear me talk about it. But I was really drawn with this kind of burgundy colour pen that you just saw. And I really wanted to use it, and so I used it in that because it was a little too dark for my black pen to go over, and so I didn't want to use it where there was going to be black text being written, so I couldn't use it almost like a highlighting pen like I had in my yearly spread setup. So that's why I used it for that purpose. And then I decided to go with the kind of the Oriental lantern kind of theme, just because of the Chinese New Year being at the end of Jan, and I quite like the look of the lanterns and the glowing light. And so I used a bit of my Cardi handmade paper that I use for my pet portrait inkings. I have these little scrap cut-offs that I kind of keep just to have spare, and I just went in, sketched out the lanterns, inked them up with my some inking pens, I can't remember, my pigment liners. My Stedler pigment liners, there we go. And then I went in with some Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolours. This handmade paper is really beautiful to hold up against watercolours. It can bow a little bit, so I wouldn't say it was necessarily watercolour paper, but it definitely held up very well under these very small amounts of washes I added on to the paper itself. And I just layered up a bit of red and a bit of orange. I can't remember what specifically those colours are called, but I layered those both up, a bit of a wet on wet in some cases to add a more subtle feel, and then straight in with the colour to add a bit more of a deeper feel on some of them. And I just made sure to either add a bit of water or dampen my brush and dry it off a touch, just to lift some of that paint from the centre, so it looks like the light in the middle is kind of shining a lot brighter in there, and then the fabric lantern kind of is shining the colour out towards the edges. I did have a look at a few reference photos on Pexels and Pixabay, and that was kind of the theme going on with these lanterns. So after I did this strip here, I thought this would be enough for my very short amount of spreads that I was doing for this month, but it turns out it wasn't. I had to do another 2 strips of lanterns in the end. So towards the end I was finding the process a little bit tedious. And then I went in with this Liquitex iridescent gold ink. It's an acrylic ink just for the top and bottom of each lantern, and it just has a really subtle shimmer to it. I don't think you'll be able to pick it up on camera, but in the book it has a really subtle shimmer, which I think just adds a little pop of glam to the pieces. And then I went ahead and cut these out with a very slight border, and I think the border just adds the illusion that they are glowing almost. I don't know, in my head I think it looks really nice and like there's a little glow to the lanterns, and I feel it adds and finishes them off really nicely, so I'm glad I added that in there. But by God, was it a absolute tedious process to paint these and cut them all out like this, especially as I got a little bit smaller towards the end. But I think they look good. I think they look really good. And then to kind of finish off adding those lanterns, I thought it looked a bit silly just adding them straight onto the white bullet journal pages, and so I just went in with some neutral tint Cotman watercolour and added a little bit of a faded out background to them. So I didn't want to cover the whole thing in black, and so I thought the neutral tint was a little bit more subtle and a little bit more of a bluey tinge to offset the warm colours of the lanterns, and then I just faded it into the white a little bit where I could. It's obviously not watercolour paper in these bullet journals, but it really held the water well. As you can see, I did a wash there, and then I was adding watered down pigment to it, so it held up very, very well. Yes, it bowed a little bit as I was working, but as it dried it flattened out really nicely, and it did eat the paper somewhat, but not enough to make me too angry about it, and it didn't go through the paper, that's for sure, so that's good. And then I just laid on the lanterns and added in some little wires between them to make them look like they're hanging on some string, and the string colours I used that nice burgundy pen that I used for the January writing, and then I added on some ink liner over the top of that to kind of give it the illusion that there's multiple lines kind of running between them, and I think that worked really well, and I'm really pleased with this kind of ongoing spread theme for the January monthly spreads. I just think it works really, really nicely, and I like the way it all ties in together. To the health tracker. This is a health tracker that I used in my notepad last year when I was trying to almost have a fake bullet journal, and it worked quite well for the first month, and I'm hoping now this is a proper bullet journal I should be able to redo this spread each month. It should work really well to maintain my tracking, and hopefully I can see some trends in it, and that's kind of the premise of this, and I go through at the end what I'm tracking here, but the whole thing is just to find the trends, find, you know, better habits for certain things, and I may just alter it next month depending on how well I use it, how well it works for me this month. It's all about trial and error and finding what works for you, really. Just adding in that theme of the lanterns. This was the second batch I had to paint up since I used the full batch for the first page, but I just added a couple on here just to finish off the highlight of my day page, and I think it tied in very, very nicely. So the next pages that I do, which are the final pages of this spread, is just my calendar pages. Nothing too drastic for this month as we are midway through and there was no point continuing, but I will let you watch the rest of this video and then hear my more in-depth thoughts on why I chose the pages I did at the end. the final flip through of the January spread. There were not too many spreads for this month. I may add new spreads for my February setup, but for this setup I definitely didn't need too many. So let's start off with the main cover page. I really loved this theme. I do think I could have maybe adapted some other bits. I did it this way and I left this blank because I didn't know if I wanted to do a bit of a painting, and it might be something I do for next month. Again, I was just playing around with some stuff. I ended up being a little bit ill whilst I was doing all of this stuff, so it was kind of a bit of an experiment. Maybe my choices of colour maybe could have done with some work, but these Tom and Yop and Tom, I can't remember which way it goes, the paper in these bullet journals really hold the water very well. I was able to put a good couple of washes on there without it bowing or chewing up the paper too much, so I think it's a very nice paper, and I really like this kind of bringing in the new year and the fact that it's the Chinese New Year in January, just kind of bringing this into the setup there, and then I carried that forward. So I have my health tracker. I'm tracking my mood, whether I've gone to the gym, my steps, my litres of water I've drunk, the hours I've slept, whether I'm on my period, the amount of calories I've had, my weight per week, only once a week, for the monthly spreads, whether I've had some fruit, whether I've left the house, which is a big thing. I know it doesn't seem like much, but I work from home for my job for most of the week, and I do definitely need to get out of the house more. Whether I've spent money, it's always good to save, and whether I've home cooked. We've just started HelloFresh again to kind of kickstart our diet and portion sizes, and it's obviously very vital that we are cooking at home and not eating out, so I need to track that at the same time. So that's all that sort of stuff. Again, some that I might not use maybe as much, I might adapt for next month's spread. Then I've done a highlight of my day. I know I did things that I love, or whatever that page was in my year spread, but I thought the highlight of my day would be more of a, you know, almost everyday sort of thing, not just a whenever I feel like it. And then again, I brought the lanterns into this into that spread as well, just to tie it all together. And then the final spread is just the monthly calendar setup. I've literally just finished these, so these are still a little bit damp and a little bit drying. But I kept it quite simple. I just did the spread. I was going to do, you know, maybe 2 days per page, so the before on each double spread. But because I have only just finished this, what date is it? On the 11th of Jan rather. I'm already here, so there's no point doing that. I'm wasting so many pages, so I may do that for next month when I'm back up and running, back posting Instagrams, TikTok, YouTube, everything like that, because I'll need to plan that a little bit more in depth. But for this month, I think just having this spread is just enough for what I need. And then again, I tied it in. I did end up having to do a load more of these because I didn't have enough, and I did some really small ones just to fit in that gap there, because there was no point rewriting January for this spread, I didn't feel anyway. And then we have a notes page, and then I tied it in with the colours for this month, which again tie in really nicely. Oh, these aren't the colours for this month. Just realised they're not, but I think they fit in quite well. Maybe I'll keep them as a running theme. But they work. I didn't use them for this month. Oh god, I'm losing it. I'm still not very well. Anyway, so that's it for this month's setup. Just a couple of pages, but I think they tie well together and they're very nice to look at, and I really like the theme. So please join me for next month's setup, which I'm hoping to post at the end of this month so that I have time to actually fill it in and not do it mid-month. So if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see that video, please hit that thumbs up and let me know in the comments below what sort of themes you think I should do, whether I should go a little bit more realistic with some, you know, animals in there, or what I should do with those setups. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.